if the playing field was level, there never would have needed to be an affirmative action, but we know it wasn't and it isn't.
There was a quota against Jewish people for many, many years. So anything that smacks of a quota really gets me very sensitive.
The Black kids are not the reason why the Asian kids aren't getting into school. The white kids whose parents are rich, but you want to focus on these 5 Black kids instead of the 43% of white kids is the reason why your Asian kid didn't get in.
With affirmative action, from what I understand and what happened with Harvard, is that all the Black people that got accepted under affirmative action were people of upper middle class, educated parents. And a lot of the Asian people who they then stereotyped as not having the right personality did not get, many of them didn't get accepted that were more qualified than some of the Blacks that got accepted, whose parents were highly educated and came from wealthy homes. So I don't know, and I'm not saying I know the answer to this, but I do think that it's worth having a discussion. And I'll have to say something else. As a Jewish person, I'm very sensitive to the idea of quotas, because for a very long time, my husband was the first class at his Ivy League school that was allowed into that school. There was a quota against Jewish people for many, many years. So anything that smacks of a quota really gets me very sensitive. So I don't think this is just so simple that, affirmative action is bad and this is good and that's it. And that it means, I know in Texas, Felicia, don't they take the top 10% of every high school that can get accepted into a state school?
Yes, that happened after the Hopwood case, which is very similar to the case that against Harvard that went against the University of Texas at Austin. It was the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. I lived that at the University of Texas at Austin. I was told by many white people that I didn't deserve to be in class, and I was only there because I was Black, even though my scores were way better than theirs and I had a higher GPA. But that's neither here nor there. The reason why I was reacting, Randy, is again, it's not you, right? I think why I reacted is because this idea that the Black kids are not the reason why the Asian kids aren't getting into school. The white kids whose parents are rich, the white kids whose parents and grandparents went to Harvard, they're the reason why the Asian kids that deserve to get into school aren't getting to school. The white kids' grades are so much worse than the Asian kids, but nobody wants to talk about that. Because
you're right about that.
Right, because people are putting out this stupid ass rhetoric. It just drives me nuts. And there are white people that believe in this, and I'm just like, wake up.
And they believe they're fundamentally better, and they're not.
And
what I love is happening now is I feel people of color, not just Black people, people of color, and I mean Asian people, everyone, we're tired of the white perfection narrative. And we are all emotionally ready to move on from it. That this, by virtue that just because you're white, you're better to date, you're better to do this, you're better to manage a team in corporate or whatever. We're tired of it because that means we're not. And everyone, and this is just, and I get this feeling just from consuming entertainment and TV shows, maybe a lot of Netflix, but a lot of Netflix is moving because now they're starting to openly call it out like, oh, you're white and and privileged, no wonder you feel like you're perfect. And everyone is ready to move on from it so that we can get to that place where everyone is getting in and doing things on their merit and not just because we're all trying to maintain psychological safety for insecure white people. Do you know how taxing it is on all of us, not just Black people, to have to maintain the psychological safety because you all know, am I good enough? You know what? Do what the rest of us do, deal. Shit.
So with regard to affirmative action, Felicia, your issue, it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that a spotlight has been put on affirmative action with regard to race, and yet there's this other form of preference given that has benefited other folks based on money, that you feel is not getting equal attention, that
But
also
has a bigger impact. So you gotta understand, Black people are 13 to 14% of the US
Of the
population.
population.
Okay. And so the 5 little Black folks you let in, but and then the way they're positioning it is, oh, well, the 5 Asian kids didn't get in because of these 5 Black kids. No, the 5 Asian kids didn't get in because of the mediocre white kids that they had to make sure were in, that those Asian kids on paper beat them out 50, 100 million, 11 times.
Yeah.
But you want to focus on these 5 Black kids instead of the 43% of white kids is the reason why your Asian kid didn't get in.
Yeah.
But they're trying to position it as if, well, when the Black kid get in, the Asian kid can't get in. But
Yeah.
but white kids are just stay static. Come on.
So there are people. Yeah. So that's helpful. There are people who focus only on the affirmative, on the racial aspect. And Michelle, you brought up something, and I think Felicia, you said it as well, that one of the ways that kind of someone's motivation or intention is to see, do they treat equal cases similarly across race? That's what I think I heard one or both of you say.
Yeah, Felicia said that, but I agree.
You agree? Yeah. So there are some people who are against affirmative action, who are also against legacy, right? They don't like either. There are some, perhaps like this guy. Again, I don't know this guy, the kingpin guy, but who may very well likely be focusing only on the racial aspect, yet doesn't have an equal problem with the legacy. That would say something to me, right, about where his head is. And I would agree with that, right? What I also think needs to be acknowledged is people can be against affirmative action for reasons that in their minds are reasonable, that aren't necessarily racially tinged, that don't have bias involved. There are just people who have a problem with, may have agreed with it in the past and think that it's outlived its time because X, Y, and Z. There are people who have investigated some of the byproducts of it and don't think it's achieving the goal that it ultimately wanted to achieve. There are people who have a range of reasons in this particular case, for instance, on affirmative action, for being for or against it. And part of the reason I think it went to the Supreme Court legally versus a legacy thing is because I don't think that I don't know that there is something in the law that would even allow a case or would make a case successful against legacy. I might be wrong in that.
Well, Harvard, there's some, but I don't know who's suing Harvard now about legacy admissions, but there is
that's been filed. I just don't know if it's going to have the same legal standing because of just what the laws are. Do I think it's still, do I think it's morally an issue that someone doesn't focus on legacy as, in the same way that they would affirmative action? I totally do. All I'm meaning to get across, and this might have been what Randy was trying to get across, is that there are some people who have their reasons that are worthy of consideration for not liking the practice of affirmative action. That's it. And it's not because they're trying to target a certain group. It's because they have whatever reasons they have for thinking that it's not the right way to go. And it doesn't necessarily mean something about them.
No, nobody's saying that, Todd.
Okay.
What if they changed affirmative action to look mainly at socioeconomic status? In other words, I mean, colleges might all go broke. I don't know, but if you
No,
let in
rich
people from
never let that
families,
happen.
well, maybe the colleges, you know, some of them anyway, the private schools would just fold because they wouldn't have enough.
I lived a little bit. I lived part of that concept because in my day for the university, it practiced need blind admission. What that means is I was admitted to Stanford without any consideration of a financial aid package. Then once the list of admitted people, then that was handed off to the financial aid office. And then everyone had, after you settle, you know, who's coming in, who's going to another school, then that's when they do the configuration of financial aid packages.
Felicia, you felt a little deflated after what I said. Do you feel like I'm not hearing or understanding something that you're
Her body language has changed.
Yeah, I really want to know, because I was just trying to get across that positions don't necessarily mean motivations. You say you didn't say that. I take you at your word that you didn't say that.
No, it's a hot button for me, because just like Randy, how you felt like you expressed that you know, quotas were a hot button for you because you had a lived experience.
Yeah.
This whole thing is a hot button for me because I had a lived experience.
Yeah.
I lived through as a freshman through my last year at the University of Texas at Austin. I lived through this stuff with the Hopwood case, and it shaped my whole college experience. Like, I was protesting, I spoke at the state capitol about these things, and was a part of a group of students who worked with legislators to come up with the solve for the 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Rule. So it is something that grates on me because of so much misinformation around what we're actually talking about, and that the intention of quote unquote affirmative action was to right size, right? That you want institutions, you want companies, you want to reflect, you want that population, the population of students, to reflect the population of the US, which means if University of Texas has 48,000 undergrads, so it's a state school, and the population of Texas pretty much mirrors in a lot of ways the population of the US because it's so big. So you should have a Black population of students. That's about 13% of the student population.
They do.
The University of Texas?
In 1995, we're talking about 1996.
Yeah, we're talking about 1996.
Oh, I'm talking about now.
Now they do.
It's
Really?
14%. Yeah, I just read it. I was very curious about it. I brought it up and I just read it. It's 14%.
That's amazing, because when I was in school, it was less than 4%.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, Todd, but because what Randy said is important, and what Felicia said is important too. When she said, I was a part of the solve that came up with the top 10%. So one of the things that probably has allowed that population to grow over these years is that top 10% rule, and then Black kids being achieved in their high school. And I'll let you talk, Todd. One thing I want to point out to you is that I would have had the same experience as Felicia, because Felicia and I are the same age, only I left Texas and went to California to go live with you.
So Felicia, does this feel, so if I'm putting things together that you've said, and I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from, the deflation seems to me like, building on what Andre said, is when I was in school and this didn't exist, here's where we were. Now we're at a much better place, right?
Right.
And the very thing that helped us, one of the things, I'm not saying the only thing, but one of the things that helped us to get there is now being taken away. And that feels like a rollback to, besides being very personal to you, it feels like an example of a rollback that you were talking about before. That,
right.
hey, and let's take away the solution that got us there. Let's roll back this progress that we've made. Is that what it feels like for you? Or
it feels all of it in collectively, right? Like I don't take each thing in a vacuum. I'm feeling it all in real time at the same time. The death of George Floyd, the things happening in the courts, the killing of, you know, Black and brown people, the killing of trans and LGBTQ people, I mean, just there's so many things that are going on, and I too, Michelle, I try to limit my news watching, but I try to
I read
read,
too.
and I still get this information about what is happening to my community, that all is connected to the cross section of capitalism, patriarchy, and racism. And so we can sit here and have this conversation all day long.
Yeah.
But if people don't take away from this conversation a question for themselves about let me go first, let me educate myself, and two, let me figure out all the things that I can do. And when I feel like I've done enough, let me go figure out how I can do one more thing. And sometimes the things are simple, like let me go start having these conversations in my fan group. Let me go to my group chat and start this conversation with them. And then somebody who wants to shut down and not have the conversation, let me press them a little harder. Let me make this uncomfortable for me and all the people around me until we start figuring out ways to fix it. Let me take this mantle onto myself. And I know not everybody's going to take it, but if we can get just some of the silent people to start feeling a sense of responsibility and start taking it, we can start seeing movements in a better direction. We can, you know, this is where, you know, when I felt helpless in college, I was like, okay, I'm going to now walk campus and get people to register to vote.
Yeah.
I'm now going to become a voter registrar so I can register people to vote on campus. I'm going to, so it's like finding the things that you can do that add up. It all is like coins in the piggy bank of goodwill that adds up to make life better for all of us and make life better. Like I think about these kids. Like I don't ever want, like if I hear a story about a young person 20 years from now in college where the white girl whose last name was Welch, which is the science building on the University of Texas at Austin campus, telling me or telling this young person that they don't belong here, they're only here because they're Black. Well, how did you get here, ma'am? Because your last name is on that building.
Mm-hmm.
You think you deserve to be here?
Harvard is littered with buildings like that.
Okay.
Literally.
We both here
littered.
though. Hope you make it out.
Yeah. Michelle, how do you take this all in? And I know you wanted to kind of go further with the education process. What's on your mind?
I mean, if the playing field was level, there never would have needed to be an affirmative action, but we know it wasn't and it isn't.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're definitely stepping back, and it's very intentional.
What some will put forth is, you are totally right, Michelle. We need a level playing field. This correction works well for some people and it doesn't work well for other people. And that's what our issue is that in the quest to achieve equity, we're not focusing on the very thing that you just brought up enough, which is let's make a level playing field so that we don't see these discrepancies in academic preparedness, for instance, so that we don't have to worry about that. So we don't have unintended consequences. That's what their point of view is. And I don't know, do you see any merit in that point of view? Do you feel any alignment? You know, I don't take these people. I'm not saying there's not people who are intentionally have racial bias and are, you know, want an end to this policy because of that. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I do think there's a portion of people who worry about the means of getting there, even if they want the same outcome of equity, and want to focus on the, you know, the beginning steps of where this inequity happens. I don't know, do you see any merit worthy, at least of consideration of that point of view? Like how do you respond to that?
I'm going to say no, because I've seen the outcome.
Okay.
I went to school several different places. I think I shared before, I was born in Louisiana, went to
Yeah.
school there until I was second grade, then came to California, and I went to school in the inner city, very rough neighborhood. And then I was bused for a year out to the valley. When I was in the school district in the inner city, I was, they called it gifted back then, you know, so I had special classes after classes, but the books were old. You know, they were old, they were ripped, they weren't, you know, in the best condition. There were some good teachers, but others, you know, they were tired. They were there to get a paycheck. You know, luckily for me, I had some that the majority I had weren't. When I went to school in Tarzana, the books were new.
Yeah.
The teachers had teachers' assistants. You got more, you know, one-to-one attention. So it was obvious to me, you know, as a 9-year-old, that it was different.
Yeah.
And so I had to surmise this was based on race, because the school in Tarzana, there weren't any Black children except the ones that were bussed in. So it was race and it was socioeconomic. And until you change the core of all of that,
Yeah.
because if you did, then you wouldn't need affirmative action, who, you know, like Felicia said, Black people were not even the recipient of that. That's the way that people, you know, view it. Oh, you know, these people benefited. No, that's not who truly benefited from it. You know, but again, rolling back time, if you don't fix the core, it's like with the, you know, with the Band-Aid. If you fall down, you skin your knee and you put a Band-Aid on it, I mean, it heals, but there's always going to be that scab and that scar.
So your basic premise, if I'm hearing you correctly, Michelle, is that you don't feel comfortable with the Band-Aid coming off until the core is really changed.
Yes.
You need to see the core changed first, not to depend or rely on the potential for that being changed. Until that's changed, you want that Band-Aid still on as a corrective force.
Absolutely, because it's needed. I mean, when I look at what's going on in today's world with education, it tells me that I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
And may I make another logical connection with respect to that? Because I do want to get back to the idea of a thriving democracy and the court system. But because you also have the core that needs to change, and the court system is being used to prevent that change, or at least to slow that change down as much as possible, like this gentleman we talked about with the lawsuits, right? And in a thriving democracy, you know, how can I put this? I guess the question I want to pose to the group is, what would you have the court system do or serve with respect to changing that core? Because you have activist judges, and you have some that may be sympathetic to causes that increase equity and diversity, and you have others that may not. But in either respect, the judge is not being impartial. But we want to get to a system of impartiality, right? But that seems hard to do. So the question I'm asking is, the core changing and democracy, and using the court system to engender that change, is there something that needs to change about how we manage the court system or how it functions so that we can make a better society? Or is it just not possible? Hope my question is clear.
I'm wondering if it's just the court system that's an issue, because what about unions, teachers' unions? And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but in a lot of communities where there could be school choice, the teachers' unions are against that. And
You
that
bring
would
up a
probably,
good point.
that
So
would
somebody,
probably benefit a lot of Black kids who want to get into better schools. And I mean, there are a lot of issues that are not just the court's job to deal with.
also with respect to textbooks, right? Something I learned about the state of Texas, because there's so many children in school here, we have a lot of sway, I guess. Felicia, you probably know more than I. We have a lot of sway with respect to textbook purchasing, which means when people come up with versions of a history book or whatever, Texas has a lot of sway in saying what gets put in a history book and what doesn't. And that impacts all the entire country. So unless you have a teacher that has the permission to do supplemental learning, and outside the court system, to Randy's point, we're also impacting people's lives by, these indoctrination institutions and bringing, which education is one of them, and bringing a certain framework of thinking about the rest of the world and other human beings in that institution that's being, where you think you may have some agency that's kind of being decided upon for you.
So we're bringing up different aspects of our society that may inhibit or could support racial equity. And Felicia, your comments around kind of what are we going to do to, let's say, stem the forces that do actually want to push us back in some way. These are different avenues. I mean, I'm sure we can go on, I would bring up their local school, financing, right? I mean, I can tell you in Los Angeles, there are all sorts of little communities. Some of it might be based on race. A lot of it is socioeconomic, where, these little communities wall themselves off from the bigger community, right? So that all their property taxes just go to, their kind, whatever that means, socioeconomic or racial or otherwise, right? I mean, there's all sorts of forces like this that prevent, but I think the basic impetus, whatever solutions we might come up with, Felicia, your basic point is, are you going to be, do you see this as problematic? Do you see inequity, the outcomes, the impacts as problematic? And like, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to sit back and passively think it's just going to correct itself, or is there something that you're going to do, based on whatever you think the solution is to kind of move things forward? Is I think the basic gist that I think I got from you. Am I right in that?
I stand by. We all need to do our part, right? And when even me, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, oh, I used to do so much more, so many other things. And because the excuse of I've moved around a lot in the past couple of years, I've stopped volunteering in the ways that I volunteer and all those things. But, I do try to give money. I think we're going to have to pick sides. Everybody is going to have to pick their side.
You seem to get down there. You were upsetting me.
No, I think I just had this moment of,
oh, did I? I didn't.
Are we gonna fix it? That's what I was like. Are we ever gonna fix this? Like that's what was happening for me. Like,
I know.
How can we fix it? It feels so large, and everybody has their own take, and everybody has their own experiences, and it's like, how do you honor all that and find the solution? Like, is there a solution?
I know. I hear you. I think one of maybe my purposes of bringing up some of, belief and motive was to share that at least I've come across. I can't speak for, I don't have the data on the overall population. It was just to speak to my my experience that there are people who genuinely are troubled by racial inequity, but have points of view that are different than maybe I would or you would, on how to on the right path forward, and that there's more allies, even if it makes it more complex for people to have different points of view, that there are more people in good faith who really do want to see something different. I even hear it in Marietta, right? When I bring up the resources, and I don't know what your reaction is, but I was trying to feel your reaction and on my own reaction too, which is like, it's always like, yeah, but it's going to be so problematic to give resources, and where does it go, and all of this. And I get that. I mean, I've been in contact with the government system myself. I've worked in it, and I've been a recipient of it, and it is shitty.
No, the whole thing. I mean, we need to I wish there was a reset button, a start over button, a Thanos snap. I don't like, and it's hard, right? Because, and we didn't get to talk about this because I didn't know how to formulate it, but like, I think Clarence, I didn't read his argument because I didn't want to get myself all worked up. But what I heard bits and pieces was there's this argument that, as a person who benefits from affirmative action, there are psychological consequences.
Right.
And I can't deny that because I went through that. It's very traumatic to have to fight people saying you don't deserve to be somewhere because you got in because you're Black.
Yeah.
Right. And even though that you got the test scores, you did all the things. And that idea that the Black people benefiting from affirmative action are like somehow lesser than the standard is just baffling to me, because every Black person I know that's ever benefited from affirmative action have been exceptional, have been Black excellence, have been 2 standard deviations from the mean, right? And so there is some truth in the perspective of, is this the right way? Is this the path? And I don't know if you noticed, but I never said I agreed with affirmative action, and I never said I disagree with affirmative action. I think it is a very complicated thing. I think what gets me riled up is these untruths that, well, if they put this Black person and that Black person don't have as good scores as this Asian person, and that's why it's wrong. And I'm like, that's whack. That's a straw man fallacy argument. Like, there are a vast majority of kids benefiting from any type of affirmative action are white kids. So like, let's be honest about that. Like, the Asian kids aren't getting in. It's really because of the white kids, not because the Black kids. And so that really pitting quote unquote minority against minority, that idea. And then the scariest thing is that Asian people now believe that they have a level playing field at Harvard now.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. That's the craziest thing. More Asian kids are not going to get into Harvard because of this. The numbers won't lie. Harvard's not going to change. It is a faction within itself. And these Asian kids that want to get in, and they're mad because they can't get in. Now they think more of them are going to get in. No.
Yeah. I mean,
so like the whole thing is a farce.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I probably line up very much with a lot of your thinking on it. I don't think it's a farce in everybody's eyes. I do think people have, I mean, I said this during the conversation. I think some people have reasonable reasons to not like what currently exists. Let's just say that. Mm-hmm. My issue is, first of all, I hate that psychological argument because it's a bind. It's a bind that you put people in, right? Because you're trying to correct something that does exist. And so, yeah, there's some unintended consequences, but then you throw out the very, you can't
throw out the baby with the bathwater.
That's the whole thing. The whole thing is baby with bathwater. Why is the answer to some of these legitimate concerns? So there are, there's research studies, they need to be replicated. Some of them have, But in some instances, minorities, people of color who get in, who are on the lower end of the academic, scores and whatnot, but they're interested in STEM, they will tend to, if they are at an institution in which they are in the lower part of the academic rankings, they will tend to be dissuaded from STEM. We don't want that as an outcome. I get that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There are things to fix, but why is the answer to get rid of the whole thing? I just don't get it. Why not fix that problem?
Fix the issues. But the first issue we got to fix is how we as humans are perceiving the problem. Right? Because part of the issue is that there are people who perceive that there's no need for this anymore because Black people can get into Harvard and Black people can get into Stanford and Black people can do things. And I'm like, but we're not fixing this. There's systemic issues that are happening where there should be certain Black people that do get into Harvard that are not getting into Harvard, right? There are just like there are certain Asian kids that should be getting into Harvard and they're not getting into Harvard. The Malia Obamas get into Harvard, not the Felicia Anuha.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
There's also an issue. Yeah. No,
who should get to go to, so also who should get to go to Harvard?
Right. Well, and that's what, Andre and I talked about this, we did an episode on it, but I find first of all, I find problematic. I actually think diversity is a good in and of itself. Actually, largely for the reasons Marietta brought up, because
it's educational. Because
education is not just learning facts and figures. Education is being socialized into a broader public. So that being said, I find very problematic the concept of merit being solely focused on these scores. I understand it's an example of a certain kind of achievement, but when you have different inputs that you've been given in your life to achieve your success, it says nothing. Those scores, they don't not say nothing. They only tell part of the story, and they don't tell you the story of what someone's capable of achieving.
Yeah.
And if you find it problematic, the outcomes that you're getting because you're relying on test scores, figure out a way to really know someone's potential and then invest in that potential when they get to college. Andre, based on these statistics, had every reason probably not to succeed at Stanford, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Andre succeeded. He got invested in. He had his own initiative, which we should prize,
Right.
but he invested in certain ways, and he showed regardless of, I don't even know what his scores were, but he feels like there was a large chance that affirmative action helped him at the end of the day get in.
Back then, absolutely.
Yeah. And so anyways, Andre's just a person, but that kind of story can play out, I think, way more than it is playing out. So I find problematic a lot of the reasoning and thinking around this. So
I think the scarier thing that's not being addressed in that whole situation is test scores are a lot of times have an inverse correlation to leadership potential. So it's like the higher you score on the GMAT past the 700, it's probably there's a probability you're not as good of a leader of people. Because you don't have the personality traits that a leader needs, because your strength is this quantitative and qualitative test taking.
Right.
You need to be charismatic. You need to be able to think on your feet. You need to all these characteristics that you need to be a creative problem solver. You need to be highly collaborative. You need to be able to create a vision and tell a story. None of these tests for those things.
Yeah.
So if I am a university and I'm looking for the next leaders, and then there's a bunch of Asian kids saying, I got the highest test score. We scored perfect and we have perfect scores and perfect tests. But like, there is something to be said. Well, but what about your leadership ability? And not saying that you don't.
Yeah.
But I remember my school's valedictorian, and I don't think I would ever want to work for him. Lovely human being, sweet guy, white guy, middle class, humble beginning, upbringing. I think he went to Texas A&M and graduated from there. I have no idea what he's doing now. But he was the valedictorian of our class and very socially awkward, very not socially astute. Hopefully he grew out of that. Hopefully he learned. Hopefully he's not, making somebody's life miserable in a corporate setting somewhere because he could make good grades. Also wondered how he fared in college though, right? Because again, he was the top of our class out of almost 500 students. He got a full ride because of that to Texas A&M. Did he finish? Was he able to make it? Because being from a small town and being sheltered and being made to he started taking the SAT in the 7th grade.
Yeah.
So again, his parents were doing everything to get him into college, but how is he prepared for actual life? And if universities are supposed to prepare students for life, then the university has a duty to build a student population that mirrors the US population in all different facets and boxes and characteristics. That's a difficult thing to do. And there's a lot of forces at play to try to sway them, and there is a finite number of spots. So this is wholly complicated, right?
Yeah.
And so I got discouraged in that moment because it just hit me like, fuck. I don't, on one hand, we tell kids if you work hard and you make the test grades and you make the scores, then all the doors will be open for you. But that's not really how life works.
Thank you for watching this episode of Healing Race, and stay with us for a scene from our next video.
If you want to see more conversations like the one you just watched, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with friends and family, and like and comment on the video below.
If you'd like to be a guest on one of our episodes and have an open, real conversation about race, email us at guests@healingraceshow.com.
And if there are topics you think we should cover, we'd love to hear them. So please email your ideas to topics@healingraceshow.com.
As always, thanks for your support. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Now, here's a scene from our next Healing Race.
You've seen the bumper sticker? He who dies with the most toys wins, right?
I have seen that bumper sticker.
So I haven't seen it lately, but it made an impact because it's just so wrong.
Capitalist.
Capitalist. Okay, so how do you reconcile what I think are some of the positives of capitalism with the spiritual or religious values of things that are more important than the monetary things?
To watch the rest of that episode, go ahead and click the video below me.
To see a different compelling Healing Race episode, you can click the video below me. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.